I want to ask one question. When was the last time a game made you compose haiku? Sometimes art is very deliberate in what it decides to show you. Sometimes it doesn't ask you to think on an extremely deep and complex level. Sometimes it just speaks for itself. Suckerpunch have delivered one of the most mesmerizing and organic games not only in this generation, but in PlayStation's history. Ghost of Tsushima places you in 13th century Japan on the island of Tsushima. You play as samurai Jin Sakai, who is tasked with ridding his island of Mongol invaders who seek to claim mainland Japan as their own. Jin must adapt and question his way of life if he wishes to defeat Khotun Khan and stop the Mongol invasion. Throughout this picturesque epic, many things stopped me dead in my tracks and left me jaw-dropped at what I was experiencing. In what seems like a time of perfect masterpiece games, Ghost of Tsushima exceeds the standard by sticking to its principles and doesn't try to be something it isn't. Ghost of Tsushima is a video game, and one of the best ones in recent memory. Here's why. At its core, Ghost of Tsushima isn't a complex, winding narrative. On the surface, it's a rather straightforward war story of the samurai forces trying to save their home. But what this game does over its 3 acts is ask you an extremely important question. Is honor more valuable than life? Samurai live by a code of morals and honor, and to break that code is to break one's own identity and person. From beginning to end, this game makes you question whether or not you're actually doing the right thing. Jin struggles with becoming the ghost and the new assassin tactics he is developing, and early in the story, this is portrayed through flashbacks. Jin feels deep regret for not saving his father when he was a child, which is a strong reason as to why he's willing to do whatever necessary to save Tsushima. After his father's passing, the Jito of Tsushima, Jin's uncle, Lord Shimura, takes him in and trains him to be samurai. Most of Jin's flashbacks are these training memories and lessons that Shimura is distilling into him. Jin knows that these dishonorable kills aren't the way samurai battle, but feels as the lone samurai on the island, he has no hope to save his island without the use of terror and assassination. I won't go into grave detail about the story, as I think it's best to experience it on your own, but it's comprised of 3 acts that boil down to save your uncle, win back his castle, and then kill the Khan. Each act takes place on a different section of Tsushima, and the story adapts to the new location as well. A lot of this game is told through visual storytelling, and the settings often dictate the tone the story is going for at that time. The 3rd act specifically does this extremely well in its opening moments. Seeing the Kin prefecture completely burnt to the ground and the piles of corpses laying around amplified the feelings of hate and disgust towards the Mongols. During your journey, you'll interact with a few notable side characters. Each one of them aid Jin in his journey, but have side quests and stories devoted entirely to them. These stories and quests, in my opinion, are fundamental in playing this game. You by no means are punished for saving them all till after the main story is finished, but doing them during your playthrough adds an extra sense of camaraderie that I don't think you'd get otherwise. Sadly, I do think the story is the worst part of Ghost of Tsushima. Don't get me wrong, it in no way is horrible or unplayable, and it definitely doesn't detract from the experience. It just felt lacking in the emotional aspect, par some very notable exceptions. Remember that question about honor I was talking about? This game would lead you to believe that once the Khan has been killed, all will be right in the world, and that couldn't be further from the truth. This game is about making the right choice no matter the personal sacrifice. You don't see this shown any better than in the final duel against Lord Shimura. Lord Shimura is punished with the task of taking his nephew's head, as the ghost has been branded a traitor. Before their duel, the two exchange words and remorse at the situation that they're in. This next scene answers whether or not honor is more important than life.
You have no honor. and you are a slave to it.
Jin's whole life has been founded upon the Samurai Code of Honor, and he's seen firsthand how the shackles of that honor has cost lives on Tsushima. Once Lord Shimura is defeated, you are given the option to honor him with a warrior's death or to spare him. I've seen many arguments for both choices, but ultimately the choice I believe to be correct is to spare your uncle's life. Before the fight, Shimura tells Jin that he has no honor, and once you decide to spare him, Jin says,
I have no honor. But I will not kill my family.
the story of Jin Sakai is a story about breaking his code to do what's right. He knew he wouldn't save Tsushima living by the way of samurai, and he couldn't kill his only family because of it either. Ghost of Tsushima's story may have felt lacking to me, but moments like that one stand out and make this an adventure that I'll think about for a long time to come. Where I do think Ghost of Tsushima shines is in its combat. I cannot stress this enough, this game is insanely fun to play. The combat is addicting. I actively sought out enemies because sword fighting feels incredibly good. Much like real samurai, you have many stances at your disposal. Stone, water, wind, and moon make up the primary stances for sword combat. But later in the game, you unlock Ghost Stance, which puts Jin in an almost demonic trance where he instantly kills the next few enemies and terrifies those surrounding him. Each stance has upgrades and new abilities to unlock, with the later abilities being extremely flashy and powerful. One of my favorite mechanics this game offers are the standoffs. Going into combat and anticipating the enemy's movements and counterattacking successfully is one of the most satisfying feelings you can have in this game. The duels emphasize this feeling, as most of them pose a lot more of a challenge compared to your standard Mongol fights. Duels are presented in a cinematic manner, and the build up to the fight itself helps create a palpable tension that makes these battles transcend beyond just another boss encounter. Pulling off a perfect parry and counterattack does so much for the already amazing power fantasy in this game. That power fantasy is paced extremely well, making the player actively complete tasks to unlock those cooler abilities, but not restricting them by plot progression or a huge time investment is so rewarding and beneficial that I think it's one of the core reasons why I love the combat so much. On the flip side of that, you have the ghost abilities. They are your assassination and stealth tactics. The Ghost has a far more diverse arsenal. From smoke bombs and kunai to wind chimes and blow darts, there's a huge variety of gameplay mechanics for you to utilize. Assassinations themselves are much like the parries in normal sword combat in the sense that they are super satisfying. Assassinations make you feel dirty, cause you know as a samurai you aren't supposed to be doing them, but this game makes them feel so good. Chain assassinations especially give off the "hey, I'm a badass ninja that no one can combat" feeling. Few games that rely on stealth can compare to how good it feels to wipe out a whole Mongol encampment without even being seen. I did, however, find the bow a little cumbersome to use. Over time, I did get a better handle of it, and the upgrades did help improve control, but early on, it was the one noticeable thing that I didn't enjoy. The aim felt slow and inaccurate. It could be entirely on me and poor gaming skill, but nonetheless, it was difficult for me to use the bow and feel the same sense of mastery that I did with the katana. Aside from the bow, I can't speak highly enough about how this game controls. So much of the combat in Ghost of Tsushima relies on timing, and if the controls were a tiny fraction less accurate than what they are, I don't think the combat would feel so fluid and fun. There isn't an enemy lock-on feature. Instead, Ghost of Tsushima uses directional targeting. That means you have to essentially be facing the enemy you want to fight, which in some cases did lead me to swing blindly at someone I wasn't trying to attack. There were few and far in between moments that once again could be tied to poor skill or my own impatience. Most of the grievances I had in Ghost of Tsushima's combat can be tied completely to user error, which in my opinion means they absolutely nailed it, because I've been known to not be the most elite gamer. Quests in Ghost of Tsushima are plentiful. This game has that just one more thing factor, and it's what caused me to take so long in completing the story. I spent most of my time running around completing side quests and discovering things that it really shocked me how quick I got through the rest of the other acts. Side quests can be as simplistic as tracking down a Mongol group that killed a couple villagers to an overarching story with surprise twists. Some of the best maneuvers and sword skills you can learn are found through quests known as mythic tales. These quests are some of my favorite in the game, not only because of their rewards, but because of the sheer amount of cinematic beauty they throw at you. Of course, the most meaningful quests are those tied directly to Jin's companions. Yuna, Sensei Ishigawa, Lady Masako, Kenji, and Norio make up some of the more notable characters in these quests, and each story they tell is unique and personal to those characters. While the characters in Ghost of Tsushima are fairly basic in motives and personality, they do offer some wider range of emotion once the story has progressed a bit more. I'm really glad Suckerpunch took the direction they did and gave these characters a very human feel. If Kenji were to stay the comic relief and maintain his selfish nature throughout the whole story, it would have cheapened him as a character. Characters like Lady Masako and Sensei Ishigawa show the struggle of keeping emotion out of the job at hand, and I think there's a lot of great comparisons that you can make to Jin with them in that regard. Yuna is a driving force for Jin, and if it wasn't for her, he would have died on the beach at Komada, and the ghost would have never existed. Obviously, a big selling point to a lot of people for this game is its graphics. I don't say this lightly. Ghost of Tsushima is the best looking game I have ever played. Not only is it visually stunning, but the wash of color that bursts on your screen fits its aesthetic perfectly. I very rarely get distracted by how good a game looks, but it was a real problem in this one. I'd stop constantly to just take in what I was seeing. The scenic landscapes, the fields of flowers, the torii gates that contrast so well to the land around them, the mountaintops, the beaches, the forests, the shrines, the temples, all of it jaw-droppingly beautiful. The way the world organically exists with wildlife and weather, I don't think there's a single blade of grass in this game that doesn't move. This game is the definition of immersion. I know this is cliche, but it really makes you feel like you were in Japan. For me, that was extra special since I took a trip to Japan earlier this year, so seeing all the attention to detail and legitimacy that Suckerpunch packed into this game made it so realistic that it's impossible to play this game and not get sidetracked by the natural wonders. The music in Ghost of Tsushima also holds true to tradition with its use of Japanese instruments and sound. The score for this game is nothing short of what you would expect from an award-winning film. The use of music amplifies tension in combat incredibly well and helps tell the story of the warriors involved. I think this is best represented again in the final duel against Lord Shimura. The song Sacrifice of Tradition tells the story of Jin and his uncle almost as well as the words they speak. It's raw emotion expressed through sound. Sorrow, regret, suspense, adrenaline are all showcased vividly in this one theme, and it fundamentally fuels the most emotional sequence of this game. In a game that already does everything amazing, the attention to detail is mind-boggling. There are so many small details that it would be impossible to name them all. Touchpad mechanics on the controller have an actual purpose that doesn't feel gimmicky, with the options of sheathing your sword, pulling out your flute to play songs, bowing, which is a beautiful touch, and guiding wind. Ghost of Tsushima doesn't use traditional waypoints or a minimap. The way you locate your waypoints is done through guiding wind, which is a gust of wind that will blow in the direction that you need to go. There's also a nice narrative backing to this, with the wind being representative of your father and the golden birds that show you to points of interest being representative of your mother. This use of organic gameplay and storytelling is only further reinforced by the visual points of interest you can physically see in-game. Oftentimes you will see smoke bellowing up to the sky, and it's probably in your best interest to go scope that area out. The authenticity that's shown off in Ghost of Tsushima is so apparent that it doesn't need me to tell you about it. You can see it. Here's an example that I'm sure I'm only weird enough to notice. The pebbles at Omi Monastery are raked in the same patterns that a real Zen garden would be. They didn't have to rake these pebbles. I'm sure 90% of people wouldn't have even noticed that, but the fact that they did only goes to show Suckerpunch's dedication to present this game as accurately and respectfully as possible. Inari shrines were good enough on their own with giving you a charm upgrade, but guess what? You get the best possible reward in the world in the form of fox petting. Hey, is that a random chest in the middle of the road? Guess I'll loot it. Oh no, wait, it was a trap set by the Mongols. This world is fleshed out to a degree that few games can truly achieve, and it doesn't take an astute eye to see that. One feature that I didn't delve into at all was the Kurosawa mode. As much of a Japanese-obsessed individual as I am, I have never actually sat down and watched a samurai movie. It just didn't seem justifiable to strip this beautiful, lush, and vibrant world of its color. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Perhaps on the next playthrough. Ghost of Tsushima does offer another cinematic option with its incredible photo mode. I don't think any game has made a photo mode as good as this one, giving you actual camera tools like depth of field, focus, exposure settings, tracking, color grading, filters, and then environmental tools to adjust the time, weather, and particle effects makes this leagues superior than other photo modes out there. I said earlier that this is a time of masterpiece games. The industry is in a golden age of creation, and it doesn't look like it's going to slow down anytime soon. When a game like Ghost of Tsushima comes along and is surpassing the standards that deem something a masterpiece, there should be no hesitation to buy this game. Ghost of Tsushima may be the PS4's swan song, but is hands down one of the best PlayStation exclusives, best games, best worlds, best gameplay mechanics, best experiences ever created. There's no doubt in my mind that Ghost of Tsushima is a genre-defining instant classic that will be remembered and celebrated for years to come. It is with utmost confidence that I recommend you purchase Ghost of Tsushima.
A world's reflection. Submerged deep in nature's shade. Ever unbending.